Okay, so we're about to have a Q&A with Abbie Perrault. Abbie Perrault is a documentary filmmaker and journalist based in Chicago. She's a director and producer with Maisie Crow of ZURAWSKI versus Texas. She produced At the Ready, which premiered at the U.S. documentary competition at Sundance Film Festival in 2021 and streams on Max. She has associate produced the documentary shorts An Abortion in Mississippi, Reproductive Rights Road Trip for The Intercept, and was the impact producer on the Emmy Award-winning documentary Jackson, which premiered on Showtime in 2016. Her previous work as managing editor of the Big Bend Sentinel and Presidio International newspapers in Marfa, Texas, has been recognized by the Texas Press Association for general excellence, and her reporting received awards for outstanding feature writing and outstanding news writing. Abbie Perrault on the screen now.
Hi, thanks for having me.
What you can't hear is a lot of applause for you and for your film. And also, you may have been notified already, but you and Maisie have won the Human Rights Award at the film festival here, and this is what it looks like.
Wow, thank you. It's an honor.
More applause. So much to talk about in this film. It's just an amazing job you did. And I didn't even notice until the end of the credits that there's a company called After Row Productions. So, and this is one piece of that. But just for starters, how did you and Maisie Crow get hooked up on this story? I guess you guys worked together at the newspaper, is that true?
Maisie and I have actually worked together for about 8 years now. I worked with her on her first feature film, Jackson, and it was then that we actually connected with the Center for Reproductive Rights. That film came out in 2016 and was about the last abortion clinic in Mississippi. And back then, it felt like that was an extreme for reproductive access in a state. We know now how much more extreme it can get. And so we started pursuing this story in the lead up to the fall of Roe. So actually in 2021 and 2022, we started researching and making connections with the center to understand what was about to happen.
Okay, so you were already looking into the story, and then you came up with Molly Duane. How did you come onto Molly Duane?
So the Center for Reproductive Rights represented Jackson Women's Health Organization in the case that was used to overturn Roe v. Wade ultimately. And because of that, that was the clinic that was at the center of Maisie's film. And so we reached out to them before the draft opinion leaked, but around that time when it seemed like Roe was about to be overturned. And we said, what are you going to do when you no longer can make legal arguments on the foundations of Roe? And they were like, we're going to try suing states, and we're going to start in Texas. And Maisie and I are both from Texas, and we were living in Texas at the time. And so we decided to follow that story. And when we met Molly, we realized she was going to be the backbone of this film. And you can see how determined she is, but also the vulnerability and space that she holds for each of the women in this film. And so through her, we were able to be introduced to all of the women that you see in this film.
And not only is Amanda Zurawski the main plaintiff, but she's also one of the pivot points and centers of gravity for the whole story, her personality and her story. So you started following them right away as the case was going forward. So many things came out of it, and each of the different plaintiffs had different things to say that were so revelatory. But we talk all the time at these documentary, as we see them, that we put the human face on the stories that we see in the headlines, we see in the legal cases and so forth. But these relationships and these stories are so humanizing and so personal. Did you edit it together? How's the filming sort of proceed with this? Because you had a lot of back and forth to go through.
Yeah, so part of it was very conventional in that you can follow the beats of a court case and you sort of know what that trajectory will be. You don't know all of the twists and turns, and you see how many twists and turns Texas threw these women's way. But what was something that we came across very early on in a conversation with Amanda actually was we asked her, what is something that the media that's been covering your story has missed? And she said, what they understand is what happened to me the day I lost my daughter, but what they miss is just how long the trauma lasts and just how far it reverberates through her family and her community. And so we knew that we wanted to follow the personal home lives of the women who were going through this because it is such a huge dimension of their experience. And it shows just how deep the devastation goes when you're denied basic health care.
And I thought there was one interesting choice that jumped out right away was to not reveal Molly's own home life and motherhood until farther into the film. Was that a conscious choice for a reason?
Yeah, I think first you need to understand the case, and then you need to understand Molly as the attorney that she is. It is not easy being a repro attorney in America. You will be set back many, many times. And so you start to see just how hard she'll fight. But then we wanted you to start getting to know her on a human level too, and see that, she is building her own family and just all that she's juggling in carrying this case and incorporating it as part of her life.
And the personal stories, I mean, I think the main center would be Amanda, Samantha, and the OBGYN doctor. I can't remember her name. But each of them had such personal stories beyond. I mean, Amanda talking about her eating disorder, Samantha talking about her marriage and everything that she was going through. And yet they made such incredible statements. The fact that the state had no mercy and the idea of Molly saying that she is the storm and giving out the pins to the other people on the legal team, and the idea that it's the state's pregnancy. That was just such an alarming statement to have, that this pregnancy is the state's. And then I love that she said, I never thought to ask him when they were turning it around, because that argument, as soon as it revealed that they wanted to blame the doctors, and the doctors are the ones who are in fear for their lives and their livelihoods. Just sort of unbelievable. But there was so many different aspects of tension. I mean, it was hard to breathe during this because of all the tension, not only because of the legal decisions, but you have the tension about Amanda's surrogacy. How's that going to go? And then the tension about, is Samantha going to have her tubes tied? And then what's going to happen to her marriage? And what's going to happen there? And the OBGYN, is her pregnancy going to come to term? And what's going to happen with that? And then we have so much tension, and then it resolved in some ways good and in some ways pretty bad. But so did you intentionally build the tension throughout, or that's just the way life happened?
Well, I mean, it's one thing that I love about documentary filmmaking, which is that you can't predict which way things will go. And sometimes it is for the good and sometimes it's not. And I remember so vividly the day that I went into Amanda's home to film her getting the results of her embryo transfer. And I think we all, had grown so close in the process of making this film. This is definitely the most collaborative filmmaking process I've been a part of. And we all truly, I think, hoped and wanted to believe that it would be a good outcome. And so as the hours wore on and we realized the call was not coming yet, and then ultimately getting that news that it had not been successful was devastating for all of us. There's so many moments in this film where Macy and I were definitely, shedding a tear behind the camera and trying to remain focused on making the film. But that's documentary, and you gain so much in watching people's experiences and coming to understand things through a personal lens rather than through a political lens or a debate. And so we were steadfast in wanting to tell their stories on their own terms. And so it was an extremely collaborative process, like I said, because even in those very intense traumatic moments like Halo's funeral and Amanda getting the surrogacy results, that was something that we filmed at the time, but as they were going through it was such an intense moment that when we were later on, months away in the edit, it was something we repeatedly revisited with them about their comfort level and understanding the story that we were telling, and making sure that there was that continuous consent in that process.
Well, and more power to you for that. I think that remarkable that you were on the spot for so many of the different revelations that happened. And as a result, it resonated for all of us, I think, in the audience, that as the highs, the lows, the victories, and then the setbacks right after. But you were there for each of those moments. So, I mean, it's impossible to and it accumulates during the course of the film because of all those different tensions. It accumulates. By the time it got to the Cox case, it was just I was hopeless, because that's just so sad. and so remarkable. And to think that the statements that came out of the court's mouth, I mean, not the attorneys for the state, to say that the only person suffering permanent damage is the state. I mean,
Yeah, I remember my jaw hitting the floor at that moment, honestly, because, in the first hearings, you hear them question these women whether they asked the state for permission. And here is a woman in a crisis asking the state for permission, and they wholesale deny it. And
yeah.
so, I mean, that's the answer. They want to blame the doctors, but they're not willing to give women permission to have the medical care they need.
Well, from the very first hearing when they said, did the Attorney General ever tell you you couldn't have an abortion? Well, yeah, he did. Okay, I mean, he told the doctors they can't perform it, so it was ridiculous. But the little human touches, as I said, about the eating disorder, about what was happening to Samantha's marriage. I love the fact that Samantha has to, and we had a lot of laughter in the house when Samantha's trying to talk about it, and the child is turning off the light switch and turning it back on again. But these are the things that put it so personal forward, so human forward, that really make it effective and resonate. And so this is after Row Productions. What do you keep going with this sort of thing? And making more films? You have more films in mind right now about these other cases with the 43 plaintiffs and so forth?
Macy and I are always looking for our next projects, and I think it's an issue. Reproductive rights is an issue that we'll continue to track in our careers. Not everything we work on will be about it, but it's something that we're passionate about, and we see that it's continuing to be under attack. And so as that develops, we're open to continuing to tell these stories.
Well, I think that's a great thing. Before I turn it over to questions from the audience, and you'll have to wait for them to get a microphone because otherwise you won't be able to hear them, but I just want to share with the audience and with you, which you've obviously seen from the website, the Los Angeles Times review of seeing this film at Telluride Festival, and the conclusion of the review is this: it's the defiantly unslick, urgent intertwining of teamwork and private grief that lifts ZURAWSKI v. Texas out of the usual sea of issue documentaries. Crow and Perrault, toggling between the high-stakes courtroom drama and raw human tragedy. The film seizes on what's been inspiring about the women in this fight. You can assemble quite an army for health justice out of the living wounded. And I think that's just as astute as it could possibly be about this film. So there's applause for that as well. So it's hard for me to see in this light, but if we have questions for Abbie. Hand it right here down in the front.
Has the film been seen nationally?
Is the film being seen nationally?
Nationally or internationally?
Nationally,
Nationally.
internationally. What's the distribution on this film?
Yeah, so we have been on a very robust festival circuit for the past few months since we premiered, and we have continued to run an impact campaign as well, bringing this film to communities across the country. Particularly in the lead up to the election, we took it to states that were about to vote on the issue because we wanted people to be educated and informed on what these bans look like in practice. But going forward, we're going to continue our impact campaign and bring it to states with legislative sessions where this issue is going to be considered, and then to college campuses and elsewhere. And then as far as access, it's now available on Jolt. That became available today. So you can find it there.
But do you have a distribution setup?
Bless you.
Sorry, what was that?
Do you have a distributor?
We're seeking traditional distribution still.
Okay, so, and is there, before we get to the next question, is there something that we can do as viewers of the film, or the things that we can do to support what you're doing and make it better? What can we do?
Yeah, you can follow us on social media. We're ZURAWSKI v. Texas, and please share this film with people you know and let them know about what we're doing.
Okay, so more questions? Right here, microphone, please.
The one mother said her daughter lived 4 hours. In the state of Texas, that means you have a birth certificate and a death certificate. But for babies who are born and never take a breath, you don't get that. They're considered an appendage. Did you learn anything about that in the research on your film?
I think, one of the stunning things about this process that we learned was that, and it's mentioned in the film, that, these women are forced to go through this, and Texas has laws about requiring funerals for babies that are born. And so Samantha particularly was forced to go through a very long process because she was denied the care she needed, and pay for it herself.
But you didn't learn about babies that die before birth being considered an appendage?
No.
Okay. Do we have another question? What? Oh, right here. Hang on. You have a microphone, please?
It's a technical question, is that okay? In the beginning, when she was speaking in court, and you had that footage which concentrated on the members of Congress and zoomed in on them and watched their expressions as she was talking, how was that footage acquired? Did you shoot that, or was that available?
So that opening footage of Amanda testifying at the Senate was actually all acquired. It was footage shot by the Senate itself and C-SPAN. And so it's a compilation of those two pieces of footage.
And, okay, so that answers that. Okay, we have in the middle back up there, a microphone, please.
Hi, thank you so much for making this film. I have a daughter that lives in Austin, Texas, and she has two friends who have been trying to get pregnant. One has had several miscarriages and is terrified and is thinking about leaving Texas. And my daughter offered to make her feel better, that she told her that she would drive her to another state to get an abortion, to get a D&C if she needed it. And I said to my daughter, that makes you an accessory. In Texas, there are laws that you can't even aid and abet an abortion. In making this film, did you come across the stories of any women or family members who were prosecuted for trying to help someone leave the state?
So I know that that is something that Samantha was afraid of and Dr. Denard was afraid of in seeking their options for care. And Denard particularly was afraid that her husband would be implicated if he accompanied her. And it is a real law. It's a civil law that allows citizens to file a bounty on anybody that aids and abets an abortion. And we did come across a case where that was tested. The case was ultimately dropped. And so we have not seen that actually followed all the way through, but it does have a $10,000 civil fine for anybody that is successfully tried under it. And so in the case that we found, a woman had gotten an abortion and her friends who had assisted her were sued by her ex-husband, but that case was dropped.
Oh, my God. Okay, other ones? I'm looking. So I can't see. Okay, there we are.
I just wanted to say, oh, is this on? Okay. How powerful and moving this film is for me. I don't know why I'm speaking so in public, but I will. When I was 17, I was living in Germany and got pregnant. And at that time, if you had an abortion, you would go to jail. So with 17, I drove during the night all the way up to Amsterdam, Holland. And it was an awfully terrifying experience and was totally alone. No one knew except for my boyfriend at the time. And I'm just in shock that now I'm 70 and that we're back to exactly that when I was 17. It's just, for me, I just can't even wrap my head around it. So I just hope somewhere and pray that we will be able to get that humanness back, if I can pronounce it that way or say it that way. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad you were able to access care, but it is devastating every time I hear a story about people who have to climb over so many obstacles to access basic health care. And it's really the only kind of health care that is treated this way. And stigmatized in the way that it is. And I think telling stories breaks that stigma. And so thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And
Thank you.
I would ask that everybody in the audience consider telling your reproductive stories, telling reproductive stories that you learned in this film. By talking about these things, we can begin to change them.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And do we have another question? I can't see. Okay, so thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you so much for this beautiful film and very powerful film. And I wish you all the luck in the world. And we all support you in that. And thank you for sharing it with us. And congratulations again on the award.
Thank you.
Abby.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.